So good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to have you with us and for what is our monthly Shabbat table talk. It's always a pleasure to invite influential guests in the Jewish community and the non-Jewish community throughout the city of Houston. Tonight we're joined by Mark Toubin, who has served as ADL Southwest Regional Director since November of 2019, which seems like a lifetime ago.
Indeed.
Mark brings more than 15 years of nonprofit leadership to the job, from his consulting practice, from his work with the Israel Project in APAC, where he was the Southwest Regional Director. An attorney and freelance writer, Mark also has broad media, communications, and legal experience. As Regional Director of ADL, Mark plans and directs all regional office activities, including fundraising, programming, leadership development, communications, government relations, fact-finding research, and office management. He oversees a staff of 7. You were certainly the right choice for ADL.
Thank you.
I know what it is an honor in our community when you were chosen by ADL just a year ago. Mark's a former co-chair of the Evelyn Rubenstein JCC Scholarship Ball Committee, former board chair of the Inter-Ethnic Forum, and former board member of the Houston Area Women's Center. He's a graduate of the University of Texas School of Law and Emory University. So Mark, let's start by telling us, why did you decide to come back to the nonprofit Jewish world, and why ADL?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me to this forum. And before I answer that question, I just want to, first of all, thank you for all your sermons as of late, which have been really terrific on all the issues that we address. In particular, I think you gave one this summer, which I hadn't heard. It had to deal with, I think, athletes talking about, issues affecting anti-Semitism. And I hope you don't mind this bit of a digression, but
Sure.
I hadn't heard it yet. I do follow you on Facebook, and so I do see a lot of them. It happened to be a day where, because we're working remote, the phones were routed to my cell phone. And I answered the call, and it was a gentleman saying, I've got this great sermon. It's on anti-Semitism. You have to hear it. You have to watch it. It's really terrific. And I said, absolutely, I'd love to. Which rabbi gave it? And he said, Rabbi Strauss of Beth Yeshua. And I said, I'm a big fan. I usually, follow his sermons. I'd be happy to do it. Can you please send me email? And, we talked for a bit. And he said, oh, by the way, I'm his father.
Oh, God.
So I want you to know that you've got a great PR team. You're set in that area. But the sermon was terrific, and I'm glad that he forwarded it.
Well, I figure if anyone's going to like the sermon, God willing, it's my parents, right?
So Larry, if you are watching,
yeah, no,
thank you for forwarding.
They are. And unfortunately, there's been no shortage of sermon topics when it comes to anti-Semitism in the last couple of years. So is that what got you more interested in coming back to the Jewish nonprofit world and maybe ADL?
Partially. So I wasn't really focused on re-entering Jewish professional life. I received a phone call asking if I was interested, and so it was really the work of ADL that brought me back. Not only the work addressing anti-Semitism, but the work on social justice, and particularly this time. A lot of the issues I was kind of working on, in various aspects on my own. But I realized, in my experience with APAC taught me this, that when you can work with an established organization that has a lot of strength and a lot of experience that can magnify your own work, that you can accomplish so much more. And so when I thought about that and kind of matched my own goals with where ADL was, that I felt that there was a great opportunity, and so I decided that it was something that I wanted to do. And I guess the other piece of it was, my daughter in 2017 was a student at the University of Virginia. Yeah. And while she wasn't there at the time, she arrived a few days later. The march on Charlottesville was really impactful. seeing people march on the lawn saying Jews will not replace us. While I've certainly been, concerned about extremism for a long time, knowing how much ADL is involved in confronting extremists and having that opportunity to be engaged from a professional standpoint, I felt was really an opportunity that I couldn't pass up.
And now, I'm glad you decided to take that opportunity, and no doubt that march in Virginia, University of Virginia, was a turning point, I think, in American history. And I know for all of us, especially as Jews, we may take for granted that people know what ADL is. But spend a moment, Mark, what is ADL? There's this rich history, and how is ADL adapted to this new modern era of social media and just this very different time than when ADL began?
Sure. Well, you hit the nail on the head in terms of how we're different. But in many ways, we're the same. Founded in 1913 to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and secure justice for all. And in many ways, it's a bifurcated mission in terms of we are here to fight anti-Semitism, but we're also here to pursue, civil rights and justice. But those two missions have always intersected because, as we say, Jews are really only as safe as any minority in this country. And so not only do we do this work because it's the right thing to do, but we also know that Jews are safer when everybody in this country is safer. Yeah. The biggest change really has to do with where the hate is and where it generates itself, and that is online and in social media. And so we've, over the last few years, have really had to adopt ourselves of how to find it and to confront that. And so we formed, for example, two centers. One is the Center on Extremism, and the other is our Center on Technology and Society. The first, they spend pretty much all their time, besides the research, looking online at the activities of these extremist groups and trying to get a handle on what they're doing. And it goes into databases and whatnot. And if they do find something that rises to the level of potential criminality, then they'll, provide it to law enforcement. But they are the essential element in terms of our providing understanding of what is happening with extremists in this country. The Center on Technology and Society is newer. Their focus is on working, it's based in Silicon Valley. And they want to essentially really partner with, media companies, social media companies, and technology companies to help them better avoid hate percolating onto their sites. And this has been a big issue. Both of these centers work really well in tandem together this summer on a effort called Stop Profit for Hate. And it was something that really became enormously successful. We partnered with groups like LULAC and NAACP and a few others. And the idea was to really send a message that not that, organizations like Facebook and others needed to create new policies, but just that they had to enforce the policies that they have. And they needed to do it consistently because there had been this ebb and flow. And so if somebody wasn't really paying attention, they just kind of go back and things would erupt. And it's just amazing and really sad in terms of how much hate and how many people had been recruited, through these sites. And it has improved. One tangible piece that we saw, and we can only claim, maybe a little bit of credit because there's so many organizations involved, which is Facebook finally changed their policy on Holocaust denial. Yeah. For the longest time, they allowed any kind of content that said, that the Holocaust didn't exist or was lesser than or however you wanted to call it, and they said it was just an opinion. Finally, about a month ago, they changed that policy, and we hope that is a policy that is enforced, and obviously we're going to watch them to make sure that it is enforced. But that's an effort that's going on for almost a decade that we've been a part of, as well as many other Jewish organizations. But it's a matter of, telling them that, look, you've got these policies. You can enforce them. You have the right. And finally, because of some pressure that was exerted, but also it's not just pressure; it's also working with them and helping them understand how they can help themselves and therefore help society in general.
I was so happy to see that Facebook finally changed its policy. It took too long.
Absolutely.
But I know that ADL played a big part in that, and I think that's what I often remind our members. If I get a call, their son or their daughter experience anti-Semitism, whether it's in high school or on their college campus, or something happens to someone in the community, or they see something online, I tell them, go to the ADL website, call the ADL. That's the place for our Jewish community still. And it's been nice to see that the ADLs have been able to adapt to these times and to really, look, social media is the place now where a lot of this is found, whether it's Holocaust denial or QAnon or these other conspiracy theories. And so that brings me to what's happening right now. This has, of course, been a difficult week in many respects. We've never had to preach. I've never thought more about patience in my life. But I think all of us as American Jews, when we go through weeks like this, and there's a lot of conspiracy theories online.
Right.
Have you seen an uptick in anti-Semitism, and what should we be watching for as Jews? What should we be frightened of right now in this? We've already been dealing with this pandemic where there's plenty of conspiracy theories. We have QAnon, which is one big ridiculous conspiracy theory that has very anti-Semitic overtones. And now we have this contentious election, and there's conspiracy theories. So, and as you know, conspiracy theories they're never good for us as Jews.
They're never good. They're never good.
What should we be watching for?
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to tell you the prayer that you read during services, which I don't know if everybody heard, was really terrific, and thank you for sharing that, because that's the message that people need to hear, and is similar to some of the things that we've been talking about. And I also want to make the general point that as hard as this week has been, let's not forget that there's actually a lot to celebrate. We, in spite of the pandemic, in spite of the divisiveness in this country, which is very clear, we had what was probably the most people vote in an election across the country. And we can celebrate, and we should celebrate that, regardless of your partisan affiliation. And so I think that was something that we were working towards in our effort. We've been really involved in voting rights as of late. We were involved in some lawsuits in order to make sure that people had safe and secure access to the ballot, regardless of their political persuasion. And that's what we wanted to see was participation. And we saw that, and we're very, very grateful for that. But still, we're now in a position where it's a very close race. And this is something that we've been concerned about, as others have as well. And these conspiracy theories, which have been out there and have been percolating, look, first of all, a lot of these things, they start with these extremist groups, they put them out, and then they percolate in sort of to the mainstream.
Yeah.
And that's what you see when you see your friend or somebody post it in a sort of a meme. It didn't start in that form. It usually started someplace very, very different, and it kind of worked its way up. But one of the things that it's important to note is whenever there is divisiveness, there's going to be scapegoats.
Yep.
Right? People look for scapegoats, and whether those are Jews, whether those are other minorities, whether they're immigrants. So we have to be cognizant of that, and we have to push back against that. So we have to push back against those conspiracy theories, and we also have to know what to watch for. There's a lot of dog whistles out there, For example, a lot of these theories are saying that George Soros or globalists are behind stealing the election, or things like that. Those are codes. Globalists and George Soros, those are codes for Jews. George Soros is sort of the new Rothschild, so to speak. And so, we have to be careful not to give credence to that, even inadvertently. And those are kind of in terms of just what's happening like right now. Those are the things that we really, need to watch for, and also watch for people who are really trying to undermine democracy. There are, if somebody has legitimate concerns about, something that happens in an election, absolutely they should bring it forward. But there's a big difference between people who are just out and out trying to really undermine our democratic process, and it's really also been refreshing to see that people on both sides of the aisle have been speaking out and saying to respect the process and to respect people's votes.
Right, and definitely a message we need to echo. And it always amazes me when I even have members here at Beth Yeshurun who perpetuate some of these conspiracy theories, not realizing that the sources are usually very anti-Semitic. And it just amazes me. One of the things I like about ADL as well is that ADL works first and foremost to protect Jews, but also other minorities.
Right.
And I think it's always a reminder, I think, and I know you agree, obviously, Mark, is that, if one minority, whether it's immigrants or American Muslims or blacks or Hispanics, whatever it may be, if they are persecuted, then we are persecuted. That we have to go out and pray. And how do we get that message across? Because in this day and age, you have some Jews who seem not to care about other minorities or immigrants, whether they're legal or illegal. How do we get them to realize that the people that are railing against immigrants, they don't think highly of you and me either. In fact,
Right.
They usually blame us. Like what we saw in Pittsburgh, that maniac who attacked the Jews at Tree of Life Synagogue, attacked that synagogue because they had hosted an event for the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. So, is there any advice you would give? Is there anything we could do?
Look, that's a really very challenging question, and I welcome your advice because you can come to my next family gathering and perhaps help. But I wish I had a ready answer for you. But I guess what I can say are two things. Is that as we as Jews have far more in common than we don't, right? And the other thing is just for you on the pulpit and others on the pulpit and any person involved in any form of leadership, whether it's preaching or urging, whatever the term you want to use, which is that we're going to disagree, right? There's probably more levels of sort of political disagreement in the Jewish community than in times past, and that's okay. What isn't okay is how we deal with those differences. And so when somebody says, you're wrong, and because you're wrong, you're anti fill in the blank, right?
Yeah.
That's where it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
We can disagree, but still basically have the same beliefs in something, but just have a different belief in terms of how to get to maybe the same goal. It doesn't mean that we don't want that ultimate goal, whatever that is. Mm-hmm. And I think if we just talk about it more, and quite frankly, a lot of times it just hasn't been talked about in the open.
Yeah.
And so I think that might be the first, quite frankly, important aspect of it, is just talking about it and out loud and saying, yeah, there's something that we need to talk about as a community.
Yeah, and no doubt, and Look, we are a fractured society, and we are a fractured Jewish community right now. And I know whether it's ADL or synagogues, and I preach about this often. My colleagues here, I know ADL, of course, believes in this, is that we can't lose sight of what unity means, especially as Jews. And we can disagree. We should have disagreements. I mentioned in the prayer earlier, the beauty of the Talmud, the reason why it's lasted for so long is because these rabbis, they went at it, but they always found a way to respect each other at the end. That they may go at it in the pages of the Talmud that we study today, and the arguments they went against each other are profound and important, but in the end, we remember, and it's often recounted in the Talmud, that they would socialize with each other, that their daughters would marry the sons of the other, that Hillel and Shammai, who had the greatest dispute of all, and they disputed all the time in the Talmud, we usually follow Hillel because Hillel showed more deference and respect to Shammai, and always mentioned Shammai's arguments first, then his own. And so it's an important lesson for us, and I know we work in partnership together, and whether we're Democrats or Republicans, and no matter who we voted for, that doesn't matter. What's important is that we're Jews, and we have to find common ground, because we have a lot to work for right now.
Yeah, absolutely, and I know that, kind of broadening that discussion into society as a whole, we as an organization are going to be looking over the next days and weeks, in terms of how we can help bridge some of these gaps, and is it, when and if is it possible to bring people of really differing views kind of together to at least just have a discussion where people can at least try to understand each other, without the vociferous and the anger.
Right.
We'd like to at least get to that point.
Right.
And we have experience with convening people of differing opinions, and whether we can use our expertise for that, certainly something that we would like to explore.
Absolutely. And look, you brought up one good point, is that as difficult as this week has been, God willing this continues, it's been relatively peaceful in American cities, and God willing that continues. One last question. I don't think a lot of people realize, but ADL does a lot to help Israel. So talk a little bit about that, Mark.
Sure. So, we have and continue to be, staunch believers in a strong Jewish and democratic Israel. And there are many ways that we lend our support to the state of Israel, but we really kind of focus right now on kind of confronting issues that are aimed at delegitimizing Israel. And that kind of falls into, 2-3 categories primarily. One is BDS. The second is the criticism of Israel that really then kind of shifts into, beyond criticism and into kind of anti-Semitism. And oftentimes it's a fine line, but there's a difference. And the third is, there's an issue that has been happening a lot of times. It's been on campuses, but it's where, Jews on like organizations and committees are being forced to have this litmus test, like that if you're Jewish, you're assumed, to have this affinity to Israel, and therefore you're biased. And the only way to overcome that is to basically, renounce your affinity and support for Israel. And until and unless you do that, you're not going to be allowed to serve on whatever this is. And so those are the kind of the three main areas where we're really focused on, kind of helping, because it fits kind of our profile of trying to prevent, anti-Semitism, because, particularly with BDS, it really, that's what it is. It's more often than not. And it's also important, however, to recognize that, somebody can be, like we talked about earlier, can have a criticism of Israel, just like they have a criticism of the United States that isn't anti-Semitic, but also when it crosses that line,
right.
It is important to say something.
Absolutely. You know, I remind people all the time, if you are against a Jewish state in the land of Israel, then in my book, you are delegitimizing our claim, you're delegitimizing our people, and I would put you in the anti-Semitic category. But that's different than having a criticism of a particular Israeli policy or a particular leader of Israel, whether it's the Labor Party or the Likud Party, whether it's Netanyahu or whether it was Shimon Peres, may he rest in peace. We can criticize, we can critique, but when we cross that line and we say, you know, that there just shouldn't be a Jewish state, when you support BDS, you do cross that line of anti-Semitism.
Right, and so that's where we've spent a lot of our time in terms of our Israel work as of late. And we also have an office in Israel, by the way, that works on issues, you know, addressing bigotry and hate, you know, pluralism and democracy, and they do a really great job, particularly in terms of a lot of educational opportunities there as well. And hopefully one day I will get to meet the director in person, other than just on Zoom.
God willing, soon you'll be able to fly to Israel.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, you got your hands full, whether it's people on the extreme right or on the extreme left. You got your hand full. So know that we at Beth Yeshurun, we're always happy to help. We love to have you back sometime. We always enjoy co-hosting programs, and we were going to do a program together this year and the pandemic hit, but we'll do it again in the future.
Absolutely.
And, let's continue the partnership. We thank you for all that you do, your important organization does, and thank you for joining us this evening, Mark.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Good Shabbos, everybody.